Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, very, very good question.
Yeah, this is a very good question.
Oh my gosh. That's such a good question.
Oh, that's a great question.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, Zanger.
It's a great question.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Really good question.
Gosh, this question to me, I hate this question.
That's a loaded question. but okay.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your support of Indie Agency News. Let's meet an indie agency. We're heading out to Colorado again. Sort of, because one of you is elsewhere at the moment. You're in England right now, aren't you?
I am in England. Very remote England at the moment.
It's got to be nice, though, I have to say.
It is nice. It stopped raining today, so that's a plus.
Well, it's blighty. That's the way it works there. It's fine. It's fine. But Megan and Charlie, you're in Colorado, probably enjoying some sun, that 300 and some plus days of sun. Maybe. Oh, no, I was wrong.
Well, Char's over in LA, actually.
That's right. Okay.
Right, even though we're all based in Denver, technically.
Okay. All right. So not sunny, sunny, sunny. Got it. Well, I'm so glad. First of all, thank you for your support of the mission. And it was funny when you first got on the radar, I was like, wait a minute. Gen Z agency. All right, cool. Now we can really dig in and talk about this and really dig into this. My time at Adweek and the Drum, we would dig into it a little bit, but a lot of times it was just a little bit surface. So coming from the point of view of the agency, I think is going to be very, very instructive for people, especially brands. So I want to start with, let's start with the background, how this whole thing got started. So who wants that? Charlie, you want to take that first?
Sure, I can take a stab. So Thomas and I founded the agency 7 years ago. We were both college students, started as a side hustle. We're helping our peers who had companies that they were working on and starting with their marketing. And so we would do everything from like their socials to some of their branding or their logo or, colors, fonts, etc., and kind of just got some momentum doing that. And decided to take the leap of faith after college and kind of run it on our own. The agency space, like getting into this, obviously very crowded space. And we were like, oh, we're the youngest, least experienced people in any pitch. How fun. What a great way to walk into a room. So, we kind of really ideated around that and like pushed that, like, okay, we know we can't change our age. We can't get more experience without just getting it.
Right.
We can't fake that. So we kind of decided to just own it and realized and see this kind of evolution from the millennial focused D2C brand craze in like the mid to late 2010s to then sort of this change that we noticed with Gen Z being the next thing. And we're like, oh shit, we're Gen Z. We're on the border of Gen Z, millennial. Like what if we could kind of use that to our advantage and as a value proposition in our pitches is saying, hey, look, like we're your audience. We're going after clients that are going after us. And we can say, hey, we have a direct line to this. We've got really solid creative chops that we had case studies from the brands we worked with in college and kind of just started to catch speed that way.
Right. Thomas, I want to go over to you because a thought here, because again, I'd mentioned that I'm not saying that it was just really surface during my time. I mentioned it's surface at Adweek and at the Drum. I just think there was so much of talk around Gen Z that sometimes it did feel surface. So I'm curious, when you and Charlie started it, what were some of the discussions that you had to ensure that you were getting the requisite depth? Because again, this is an industry that loves its buzzwords, it loves its whatever. But I'm curious about what you realize. Like we need to approach it this way, because brands really need to understand this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that there's a secret formula. I think what was unique to Char and I, though, at the time is we were really obsessed with how old school agencies would run an account. So we were big Mad Men fans.
right?
Mhm.
Like I had done a couple internships at the time at some larger agencies in London. And so instead of coming at it as I think a lot of our competition was doing, which was trying to kind of shake up how the ad industry was operating, and like not necessarily changing the target audience of Gen Z, but actually how they were producing ads and trying to be all these buzzwords, like you're saying, really authentic, etc. We kind of came to it more as we want to be your old fashioned ad shop. We just want to make sure that the creative you're producing is actually resonating with the younger audience. So
Mhm.
what we found, as Charlie was kind of saying, is that we were just able to get to what that moment was faster than our competition. So if something was trending, as we know, it goes very quickly in the world of
Right.
Gen Z. We were able to get the brand there before anyone else, right? And they were actually able to produce content on top of it as the trend was actually happening rather than post trend as all their kind of competition would do. And so we'd kind of win over the hearts and minds of Gen Z through that level of authenticity where the brand was just a part of the conversation in a very timely manner rather than kind of trying to force themselves onto Gen Z and act like they were really cool when they weren't necessarily.
Right.
So yeah, we kind of took the old ways of doing advertising, which is strategy and creative. We just put our young kind of spin and young brains on it. And because
Mhm.
of that, we just moved a little bit faster, I think, and we're able to capitalize on trends.
Yeah. We covered obviously a lot of ground here because we really have talked about what the agency is best known for. And every agency has a list of stuff that they do. What would you say outside of obviously the expertise in Gen Z? And Megan, I'm going to kick this one to you. What would you say the agency's top 3 core strengths are?
That's a hard one because it's a little bit of everything, right? And it really depends upon what the client is really looking for. And not to echo too much what Thomas has already shared, but I know first and foremost, as Thomas did mention, we're really culturally tapped in. And so with how fast trends are moving, we as like workers at this agency are so embedded into what media is happening, what trends are on the way up, whereas what might already be out the door and overdone. And so again, just helping brands have an understanding of where they have a right to participate in conversations, and where it's not going to benefit them to take part in these conversations and how they can jump in a timely manner. So that was kind of already alluded to, but that's one core. And then I think really our strategy basis that can go any direction with creative. So in terms of like our actual deliverables, we can do so much from UGC all the way through to full highly produced campaigns with CTV. But I think the strategy that really creates the clear messaging behind our creative is something that sets us apart. And we always go, as deep as we can in understanding who our brands are really trying to speak to. So not just, like we want young men or women, but like personifying who the ideal candidate for these brands is and making sure that we resonate with them specifically. And then finally, again, have alluded to this one, but we just do our best to create high impact creative that really inspires action. There is a lot of noise out there, and a lot of noise that Gen Z can kind of sniff right through and throw aside. And so we really do our best to make sure that the creative that we put out at the end of the day is resonating and inspiring, that movement, that recognition, and that action.
Talk to a Gen Xer about that.
Yeah, right.
Present company. Oh boy. I think we had a discussion about like Gen X and Gen Z and millennials, and you guys were laughing at me. Of course you should have. Let's talk about being independents. Why being indie is important to the team. Charlie, let's start with you on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it starts with just like being able to do whatever we want. I mean, that's kind of an obvious thing, but like starting young and starting in our own lane, like I think it's something that Thomas and I have always kind of dreamed of, being independent forever. We've always loved what we've seen out of like Wieden & Kennedy as an example of kind of this like trophy shop that has always said no thanks to ownership and to, having to say, get a yes or no approval. And we've seen what they've done at such an enormous scale and continue to get accolades for that's been a driving force of our inspiration of being in our own lane and being really highly regarded for that, but also being able to break rules and like take risks, especially when we're pitching. I think that's part of it. Like we know that a brand at the end of the day, we might have to go through legal, we have to go through some due diligence and whatnot, but we don't necessarily want to be afraid at the pitch level either. And I haven't worked at a large holding company agency, so I don't know what that pitch process looks like, but the way that our pitch process, sorry?
I said, Charlie, let me tell you.
So I can kind of do the math in my head of what I assume it's like. And,
right.
Not all the time, but I think the last thing we want to feel going into a pitch is like nervous or intimidated by the client not being open to hearing some wild cards. And so we'll often pitch like things that we know that they don't actually know what it means. Like we'll use Gen Z terms or like throw around
interesting
creative idea of a buzzword that's like really fresh and new. Like obviously you hear about like demure and brat and all that as like the most recent, but even back in the days of like what a simp is, like we would throw stuff at them and they would be like, what the hell is this? And then someone on their team would be like, oh, I know what that is. And they'd be like, okay, damn, we probably should follow these guys because clearly they know a little bit.
It's interesting because back in the day when social started, it was like, let the kid do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that mentality of like having like a really playful nature, I think is what we want to continue to hold as a business. And of course, taking things seriously, but like when it gets down to brass tacks. But I think in the early stages, like we want to mess around if we want our client to be comfortable with us doing that.
Right. So. No, I get that. Thomas, before we go to the next question, I want to do a little word association. So what's the first thing you think of when you see that?
I think of my barber shop because it's right down the road from Emirates. I'm more of a Chelsea fan.
Boo! Okay.
To say it, yeah. But
I got you.
I go up there all the time, so
I got you.
I'm surrounded by Arsenal fans.
Yeah. I got you. All right. So Charlie, that was a good transition into this question. Thomas, and we've gone over this a lot, but to really anchor it into one deep thought, what's the main reason a brand should work with your agency?
Yeah, there's so much. I think one thing that kind of going off what Char just said, we probably use some unconventional methods to get to the end result because we haven't had a lot of experience that, other agencies or all the people working at them have had. But I think that it really delivers super unique and results that are kind of specific to Carson Doyle. And it goes back to like a few of these things we're talking about, right? Like we can seem to capitalize on trends much faster. Even the way that we produce content tends to be faster, but also feel more organic and authentic because all of our creatives grew up with iPhones, right? And so they don't necessarily, when they think of like, oh, we need to do some sort of video advert, they're not thinking of some ginormous camera and a big set and everything. They their mind goes right to, oh, what could I do with the camera in my pocket? And what we're finding is that the brands are actually now leaning more into that content because that's what Gen Z feels is authentic to them, right? And as they kind of scroll through the feed, it doesn't interrupt the entertainment, it just adds to it. So I guess, to cap that off, it's kind of, we are a little bit unconventional because we're younger and because we don't necessarily have this rule book that we've been following for years. But because of that, it results in really unique creative that stands out.
Yeah. Megan, I want to go to talent. Why should talent be putting the agency on their list?
That's a fun one. And we always tell the clients that we work with will be the most fun meeting of your week, or like, showing up to this Zoom should never be one of those things where it's like, oh, I have to hop on with this team. It's more like our goal is to always bring the energy of our youngness and really use that to our advantage. And so if that's something that's happening externally, imagine how fun it can be internally when we're all just goofing around and kind of getting a lay of the land. And then again, as a small team, I think there's just so much opportunity to learn and to have your hand in so many buckets across the agency. I think in order to be successful at somewhere like C&D, you kind of have to be a jack of all trades. And I know our team is always really happy to get pulled into various projects and, do a little bit of everything, which is something I've really enjoyed, and just being able to learn a lot about the entire landscape from strategy to creative. And then obviously my wheelhouse is new business, but everyone really expands across the whole industry. And I think that's actually really great, again, for not only the work that we produce, but, you know, what we're able to learn and the skills that we develop as well internally.
Yeah, makes sense. Thomas, what agency did you work at in London?
I worked at an independent agency. It was actually like much larger, but it was called Recipe. And they're actually like one of the top 10 agencies in terms of billing or something now, which is just insane. I don't know how they haven't been bought up, but another agency called Mainframe, which is it's more of a production studio. I suppose. But what I really liked about that is they would partner up with like Gray and Saatchi and all that kind of work would flow through them. So I got a really good taste of what it was like to be on more of the production end of the agency world.
Right. Yeah. Taste is right.
Yeah.
I did my stint at IPG. Oh, and to Megan's point, yes, the meetings I've had with all of you have been the best of the week as well. So I get it. I understand that. So for sure. Let's go to our final question. And Charlie, we're going to start with you on this. This is a little bit more of a thought experiment, whether they are a client or not. Who's a CMO or marketer you want to say hi to? A little shout out.
Yeah. I want to say hi to someone at Spirit Airlines. I haven't figured out they don't have a CMO that I can find. There's a person like the director of branding comms, Samantha Johnson. I want to say hello to them because I have this belief, and it's, who knows if it's real or true, but I think Spirit Airlines could totally pop off with Gen Z. They need a whole overhaul, and like we could make it the coolest, best airline for young people. And just totally leaning into like all of their quirks and faults that I think have been loudly emphasized for the last several years. And they would just be such a fun brand to work with from like a transformation standpoint that, you know, I think could use some Gen Z blood going.
Tom Briss just got them as AOR.
I'm aware of that. And I think
here's the thing. There's another airline with issues, shall we say, where Megan is, Frontier.
Yeah.
Equally awful.
Sure. Yep.
So,
yeah.
So.
Whatever works, but yeah, I am excited by those opportunities.
Okay. I like that. Ryanair. I mean, Thomas, you're over in the UK. I mean, Ryanair, but they sort of lean into it anyway.
They've popped off. I mean, they're the perfect case study for what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Megan, who's CMO or marketer you want to say hi to?
There's so many. It's literally there's my job to find CMOs and marketers to reach out to. I want a beer brand so badly. I know Pacifico was just in creative review, so would love to give a shout out there. Not sure if they've gone a direction yet. But I just think it's like a very blatantly fun and kind of obvious landscape where there's nothing that's like really in your face Gen Z that any beer brand is doing. And there's so many. And so I think there's just a lot of opportunity to have some fun with a beer brand. Again, Pacifico, Corona, any of the big guys. We talked about Guinness for a while for Thomas over in London. So
yeah. Okay. Thomas,
drink a lot of Guinness
on this question.
This might be a really big one, probably too big, but Amazon. I was thinking.
Why would you say that? Why would you say that?
Just because they're one of the biggest companies in the world, and I do feel like they aren't necessarily trying to go after just Gen Z. But one thing that I was thinking about is like, you know, it really is one of those brands that touches everyone in some capacity, right? Everyone has used it, whether you're using Prime or using the music service, or you're just having your stuff delivered to your house. But they're so not cool. And I don't know if that has to do with the CEO or if it's like just the vibe of the company or that it's not very, you know, green. But I just think that they could probably use a little bit of help to make them seem a little cooler in the eyes of Gen Z because, you know, Gen Z have a lot of money to spend and obviously they want to capitalize on that as we move forward into the future.
Yep. No, that makes sense. All right. Well, this was really, really great. We were around the world, England, Los Angeles, and Colorado, here in Portland. All of you, thank you so much. Again, really fun having you as members. Really enjoy our conversations together, and it's going to be fun watching you, all of you, grow. And thanks so much again for your support and best wishes moving forward.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.